Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Today, I'm going over an idea on my Discord that again, I am too lazy to grab. Today, I'm going over what a future combat system would look like and a more difficult combat system would look like. And if you don't know what I mean by this, in the last KI Live that I went over, go check out my KI Live rundown video, they said that they want to try making a more difficult combat system to add some more difficulty to the game for players who want to experience a challenge. I honestly didn't even know at the time what that could have meant. I still don't know what it's going to mean exactly, but I have a few ideas that I wanted to go over today on how you can make this game more difficult without making it feel either too difficult or not fun. So let's get into it. The main ways to make this game more challenging, in my opinion, there's three separate ways. There's changing the enemies themselves, there's changing spells, and then there's changing combat itself. So let me go over an example of each of those. In regards to changing enemies, the main way I could see this is that the enemies either have more difficult cheats, something like they always go first, or they have double the health they have. All of these things would make the game more challenging, and we could potentially see some of these being implemented. Especially having more health and them going first would really make the duel more difficult. If an enemy goes first, they're always going to be at an advantage, and if they have more health, obviously it's going to be more difficult to kill them. Another way is changing spells. I could see this either being spells cost more pips, which could potentially be a thing, like each spell costs one more pip. That could make things more difficult, especially early game. You're going to see some difficulty there. It would completely limit the use of 4-pip hit-all spells. Like 4-pip hit-all spells will all of a sudden be a lot less useful early game because you won't be starting with 5 pips, which they would cost. I could potentially see this being good. They could also change, like potentially the damage of spells. So maybe enchants aren't allowed in higher difficulty mode. That could be a thing. And then changing combat itself, this kind of encompasses everything, but potentially something like, as I've said, enemy starts first, or maybe your pip chance is less, accuracy is less, the enemy goes like twice every few rounds, something that would add more complexity and layers to the game that would make it more difficult. All of these things I could see being more difficult. I'm going to tell you the ones I prefer are probably more health on the enemies, the enemy goes first, and then maybe the pip on spell change. I think all of those things could make the game actually incredibly difficult, much more difficult than you'd initially think, especially without a 4-pip AoE. I think people underestimate just how important a 4-pip AoE spell is. Once I was going to make a video on how 4-pip AoEs are, in my opinion, the most important spell in the entire game, but I eventually decided to scrap it because I couldn't make it into a video longer than like 5 minutes long. So I decided to scrap it, but I think 4-pip AoEs are without a doubt the most useful spell in the game, and making them 5 pips would change just about everything. Like, it's ridiculous. Now, I would like to say changing 7-pip AoEs into 8-pip AoEs really wouldn't change anything. But the 4-pip especially is going to be very, very difficult early game to actually get stuff done with that. So that's something that could potentially be bad. Also, blades would cost a pip, which is, you know, would definitely add a layer of difficulty. Ultimately, difficult mode would add some significant changes if they did that. The enemies having more health would obviously make the battles take quite a bit longer. If the enemies had something like more damage, maybe, that would also potentially be a scary thing. And then having them go first is, you know, obviously going to be a bit difficult. Now I want to go over different games that have different examples of this to give you kind of a better idea if you've played any of them. So let's start with Skyrim, because Skyrim's a game that a lot of people know and love. An anniversary edition is going to be released soon. Who knows? I might upload some videos on that. Skyrim has 6 different difficulties, I believe. It goes all the way from novice up to legendary. In novice difficulty, the enemies have very, very low health, and in legendary, the enemies have very, very high health. This, in my opinion, Skyrim's difficulty system is an example of a bad difficulty system. A bad difficulty system is one that doesn't actually add more complexity to the game and doesn't make it more difficult. It just makes it take a longer time. I believe that the enemies also do more damage on you, which definitely does add some difficulty to it, but the increasing in health, in my opinion, doing only that adds a significant problem where it doesn't make the game necessarily more difficult, it just makes it take a lot of time. For example, in the early game dungeons, you're not going to be doing a lot of damage at all, and it could potentially take you multiple minutes for each battle. And it's not necessarily that it's more difficult, more scary. It definitely is more difficult, but it's just more tedious than anything, which is why on Skyrim I always play on expert difficulty, because it's just in that sweet spot where it's not too easy where the enemies have too little health, but it's not too difficult to the point where the enemies are damage sponges, which is what I would like to see from potentially a Wiz combat update. If they added more health to the enemies when you go against them, make them not have, say, like 10 times health, obviously, that would be very bad, but maybe anywhere from 1.5 times to 2 times health. It would add a bit more health, but not too much to the point of redundancy. Let me go over what I consider to be a good difficulty change. This would be Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Now, obviously, this is similar to the Dark Souls difficulties. So in Jedi Fallen Order, the difficulty changes 3 main things. It changes parry timing, incoming damage, and enemy aggression. I would love to see something like this. This is what I consider to be a good combat change. Parry timing, in case you're curious, the main way to block damage and reflect damage at the enemy is to parry the enemy's attack. It's a very short window where you can press the block button as they're hitting you and stop them from actually hitting you, and then reflect some damage back at them. In the easiest difficulty, this window is very long, like over a second long, and you have so much time to parry an enemy's attack. In the hardest difficulty, the time to parry attack is a split second. So parrying is super difficult, but super rewarding to get done. Obviously, enemy aggression is how much the enemy will attack you compared to how much they will, just play defensively, which definitely adds some difficulty. And then finally, obviously, incoming damage and how much damage the enemy does to you. I think if they added this to the difficulty of Wiz, it could see some really good changes to the game. So for example, maybe an enemy attacks more often, and that could add a layer of difficulty, or they have more damage. That could add some difficulty as well. I don't know how a parry timer would work in Wiz necessarily. Maybe the time to select spells is halved or something, so you only have 15 seconds per round. This could potentially add some difficulty, because you have to be quick and concise with your spell choices. I would actually like that, now that I think about it. A 15-second pick timer instead of a 30-second. I think that would be pretty good. So that's really it for today. I wanted to go over the different changes and then the different combat systems of other games to kind of reflect that on Wiz. So ultimately, that's it. Let me know in the comments below what things you would like to see in a higher difficulty Wiz. Would you like to see the changes I recommended, or would you like to see something else? Let me know if I missed anything. Like, is there any other difficulty changes that you would consider to be good that I missed? I would like to know that in the comments below, but that's really it. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Go support me financially on Patreon if you really wish to. And finally, go join my Discord server. We're about to hit 300 members. Pretty darn cool if you ask me. We're having a good time over there. So thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video. Adios.